Hey guys, this is my full advanced melee guide to Elite Dungeons 3. I hope this video is able to help out anyone looking to get better at Elite Dungeons 3. In this video, I'll be mostly focusing on how to get through the dungeon as quickly as possible and how to do the boss fights as quickly as possible. I won't be focusing too much on the boss mechanics, as I assume that most of you looking to do the dungeon at this speed will already know most of the mechanics, so I'll be more focusing on damage rather than that. I hope you guys all enjoy the video. On screen right now are the items that you will need to bring to do the dungeon the way I will be showing in this guide. To start off, you'll want max melee armor and weapons, as well as those being perked out with the best in slot perks that you can afford. Damage boosting auras, preferably the Berserker aura, but if you want to use something else, I would recommend the Majorat aura, and if not that, then the Dark Magic aura. You'll also want to bring a salve amulet, preferably the enchanted version. This will provide a 20% damage boost to undead enemies, and there are quite a few undead enemies in the dungeon, including the second boss in the dungeon. The Corbicular Rex farming perk, which requires level 114 farming. This will increase your critical hit chance on the Meteor Strike ability by 40%, which is very, very helpful. Overloads and adrenaline potions, preferably adrenaline renewal potions. They are the best adrenaline potions in the game. If you do not have the herb lore level required, you can get that assisted so that you can make some by someone who does have the required herb lore level. Unlocking Disruption Shield from the Livid Farms minigame is very, very useful as well, so I'd recommend doing that. A Grimoire and a Vampirism Scrimshaw, but you will be using both of these in the dungeon. If you don't want to be using the Grimoire, then you don't have to. If you do want to bring one, then you just want to be using that on the bosses, as it will significantly increase your damage. A Ripper Demon, preferably with scrolls, to make use of the special attack, but again, if you don't want to use that, that is fine. It will just reduce a little bit of the damage that you'll be dealing. The Undead Slayer ability codex, again for the undead enemies in the dungeon, which includes the second boss, and the Limitless ability codex for Zerk rotations when Adrenaline Potion is on cooldown. Getting into the gear and inventory setup, for your armor, I would recommend you use full trimmed masterwork. And then for your aura slot, I would recommend using Berserker aura. You can also use a Majorat aura, but Berserker is a little better because it provides accuracy as well as damage. A Grimoire for your pocket slot for the bosses. It is quite expensive to use, so if you don't want to, you can just use a Vamp Scrim, but that is completely up to you. A Grimoire will significantly increase your kill times though. For your cape, just bring a Kiln cape or your best in slot cape for melee. And for the perks on that, I would recommend you have at least defense and strength to increase your dismember damage. For your amulet, I would recommend a Essence of Finality with a Dragon Claw spec. And for your ammo slot, some alloy armor spikes to deal a little bit of extra damage to the bosses and also help with clearing out the trash mobs. For your main weapons, you're just going to want dual Kopishes. And then for your best in slot gloves, Cinderbane gloves for the increased poison damage and poison procs. Laceration boots that you can bladed dive with 2-hand weapons. And then for your ring, a Luck of the Dwarves while clearing out trash mobs, and then either an Asylum Surgeons or Ring of Death for the bosses. As for the inventory setup, you're just going to want to bring pretty much every melee switch you have. Scythe for clearing out the trash mobs, a ZGS for the spec, Masterwork Spear for bleeds, Terrasol Maul for the second and third boss, flanking switch, and a mobile / shield switch. If you don't have mobile on your defender, then just bring a enhanced Excalibur or something like that with mobile on it. Ring of Vigor switch for ultimate abilities, Salve amulet for the second boss and also for the undead enemies in the dungeon, as that will provide a 20% damage boost if you have the enchanted version. Dragon Battle Axe for the spec, and then also a Vamp Scrim for certain parts of the dungeon. For your potions, you're just going to want the best overload you have, Prayer Renewal, Adrenaline Potion, and then some Spiritual Prayers. You can bring a couple more if you want, just to spam the Ripper special attack, as that does help with damage. A Rune Pouch with the Astral Body and Blood Runes for Disruption Shield, and then some Von Bombs and a Power Burst of Acceleration for getting around the dungeon. Lucky Charms if you'd like to bring those, and then the rest is just food of your choice. In this guide I'll be using Sarabrews and Blue Blubber Jellyfish, but if you want to bring something like Guthix Rest, that's also fine. And then for the Ambassador fight, I would recommend you switch up your preset a little bit because you don't need as many switches, which means you can put in a little bit of extra food and also some more spiritual prayers. So this is the Ambassador preset with just the rest of your melee switches that you will need, and then also a Adrenaline Renewal rather than a replenishment, just because it is better for Ambassador, and then a Power Burst of Vitality for the black holes as well. As for your summoning familiar, I would recommend you use a Ripper Demon with scrolls, especially if you are using spiritual prayers, as that will significantly increase your damage if you are using those to replenish your summoning familiar's special attack. So getting into the dungeon, you just want to start by surging and bladed diving down to the first set of enemies, equip your scythe, and just Hurricane Quake all of the surrounding enemies, and then just bladed dive surge down to the next set of crabs. You want to stand in the middle of these scouts and just flurry all 3 of them. And then when your flurry's finished, you want to do a cleave, and then just finish off with some basics. Once they're dead, just surge up. And here you want to stand in the center. If you want to place a Von Bomb, you can do that, and you just want to Meteor Strike. If at any time you want to see what abilities I'm using, I do have an ability tracker above my inventory. It's a little bit buggy, but it is definitely, for the most part, correct. So if you'd like to see what I'm using, just have a look at that. For these Zealots, you just want to walk over and do a flurry, and then just finish them off with some basics. Then to do this surge bladed dive here, you want to step diagonally towards the wall, and then surge through, and then bladed dive across. Step back 1 square so that the Zealots drag out. Barge in, Assault Bleed 1 of them, and then Hurricane and Quake the remaining enemies. For this next part, you're going to be fighting a few zombies, and they are undead enemies, so you want to equip your Salve Amulet, and also use the Undead Slayer Sigil. And just use a flurry on the first set. Finish the rest off with basics, and then surge bladed dive down and Hurricane Quake the second set of zombies. You then want to cross the plank here and just barge the armored zombie, which is normally standing around the back. Put an Assault Bleed on that zombie, and then just cleave and Hurricane the other zombies that have lower HP. Head over to the 2 Zealots guarding the gate, and you just want to flurry them, and then just use some basics to finish them off, and start building, getting ready for your boss fight that you're about to enter. And then you want to activate your Grimoire, and start with a Zerk, surge down, and then barge while placing a Von Bomb. Use an Adrenaline Potion, 2 basics, and then step aside and do an Assault Bleed. 3-hit flurry into a Destroy. I would also recommend that you call your Ripper Demon, because sometimes he gets stuck at the back of the arena. Once your Zerk is over, you just want to use a Dismember and a Tendrils, and then you want to use a ZGS spec, and then just continue DPSing. You can use a Limitless inside your ZGS spec if required to get your thresholds off sooner, because you definitely want to just dump out all your thresholds again, get another Destroy and Assault, and preferably a Flurry off as well. Before he does his next spin, so don't be afraid to use your Limitless for that. Continue DPSing with basics, and then when your ZGS is over, drop another Dismember. And then just continue DPSing Leviathan while avoiding his special attacks. During this time, you can also be spamming your summoning flasks to get your Ripper Demon to spec more. And with this rotation, and if you're using a Ripper Demon with scrolls using the summoning flask, you should be able to one-cycle him most of the time if you have a Grimoire on. Once he's dead, just surge through, bladed dive through the rocks, and then use a Power Burst of Acceleration, and just surge all the way down to the next set of enemies. Barge the Zealot, place a Flurry Bleed, that'll do a little bit of AoE damage. And then you want to cleave and Quake, and then most of the enemies should be dead. Here you can equip your Salve Amulet again, because these enemies are undead. And use the Undead Slayer Sigil and just Meteor Strike all the enemies. Surge, bladed dive, and surge again all the way down to the rest of the enemies. You just want to Hurricane Quake on the Necromancer. The reason you want to target the Necromancer is because Hurricane and Quake do more damage to the initial target rather than the surrounding targets. Then you just want to surge through and barge with mobile on to the Necromancer, a soul bleed, and then you can bladed dive across, cleave the center zombie, and then use a flurry as well. Once you pass through this door, you want to equip your Essence of Finality again, because the enemies here are not undead, or at least not the enemies that you need to kill to open the barriers. Just want to barge again with mobile on the Necromancer, use a Hurricane and a couple basics, and surge through and activate the artifact. Then head over to the second Necromancer, barge with mobile again, place a flurry bleed and a couple basics, and then walk through and activate the artifact. Here I would also recommend that you put your Vampirism Scrimshaw on, and you're going to want to put Range Prey on for the bridge. Walk across, use Devotion, then surge down, barge the left Sea Horror, place an Assault Bleed and a Von Bomb, and then move over to the right hand side and equip Scythe and Hurricane Quake the second Sea Horror. And as you can see, the first Sea Horror is stuck behind the other one, and then you can only have to worry about getting specs from one of them, reducing a lot of the damage that you would have taken on that bridge. The spot here, you can surge and bladed dive through that wall, and then you just want to wait for these enemies to group up and then activate a Meteor Strike, and then just finish off any remaining enemies. You just need to kill the skeletons and the necromancers. These zombies you just want to use to build up adrenaline, and then grab your preset out of the bank. Here you want to equip your Pterosaur Maul and your Salve Amulet for the boss, as well as your Grimoire, and start off with a standard Zerk rotation, using an Adrenaline Potion, and when you activate your Undead Slayer you want to use your Assault Bleed into a Destroy, and then into a Flurry. When the portal spawns, just wait until you finish this phase. You want to get Taraket down to 200 KHP. Make sure you kick him towards the west side of the arena to force the Corpse Carrier spawn. Once he's phased, head over to the Rift. Use a Dismember and Tendrils with your Masterwork Spear, then a Decimate and a Fury, then walk under and use a Quake with a Scythe. If you need to, use one more basic to finish it off, otherwise head over to the Corpse Carrier, use a Vulnerability Bomb, and then a Slaughter plus a Decimate, and then you want to use 2 defensives while not attacking the Corpse Carrier to wait for your barge timer. Barge with dual wields, and then ZGS spec Taraket. Switch to your Pterosaur Maul, cleave, Assault Bleed, and then switch to dual wields. Make sure you have the correct Protect Prayers on here, and that you're staying high HP. Once he's phased, get on the Corpse Carrier, and lower his HP a little bit, and then when you're happy with his HP, around 30k, you want to Meteor Strike Hurricane. That should get rid of most of the skellies under him, and then just use Bladed Dive with Scythe to get rid of the remaining skeletons. Use a defensive, and then Zerk. Barge, Taraket, place a Bonbon. 2 basics, so cleave Sever with the Pterosaur Maul, activate your Undead Slayer and use an Assault, and then switch to your dual wields and build for a Destroy. If you want to add a Flurry in, you can, but it won't be single target damage, so if you want to, you can just use some basics, depending on your adrenaline. Once Zerk is over, use a Dismember, a Slaughter, then switch to dual wields and kick Taraket, and then just keep using basics until you're able to use a ZGS spec again, as it's still on cooldown for a little bit there. Use your ZGS spec and then just continue to DPS with your thresholds. Don't worry about the second rift that spawns. Generally with that rotation you should get a sub 2 minute most of the time, provided that your DPS is okay. Unfortunately the hits that I had there were just not that great on the last phase. But yeah, once Taraket's dead, just head over to these undead enemies. And you just, I'd recommend having your Vamp Scrim on all the way up until Ambassador now, because there are some pretty hard hitting enemies in this next part of the dungeon. For the Calgarian Demon, just wait for your barge cooldown, and then just barge Assault Bleed, and remember to use the Demon Slayer ability codex, as that does work on that Calgarian Demon. Bladed Dive through the wall, and then just Surge Bladed Dive down all the way to the first Necromancer. Barge, place a Flurry Bleed and a couple basics, and then Surge down, and Hurricane cleave the second Necromancer. Once he's dead, just Surge Bladed Dive through the wall, place a Dismember and a Slaughter Bleed on that first Necromancer, and then barge over to the second one. Sometimes the two bleeds won't kill that first Necromancer, just depending on hits, but generally it will kill it. Once you've finished off the second Necromancer, just jump off the ledge and move down towards the crabs. Here I would recommend using a ZGS spec, and then just building for a Hurricane and Quake, and of course making use of Cleave as well. Once you open the next gate, equip your Salve Amulet, as there are 2 warped skeletons here. If you want to, you can have your Mage Prey on here and just use your Vamp Scrim to heal, as they do hit quite hard. But I would just barge one, place an Assault Bleed, and then Slaughter and Dismember the other. Remember to move the target to get your triple damage from Slaughter. Once you've killed those skeletons, move down to the Zealots and group up all these enemies. And then you just want to Meteor Strike, and then Hurricane Quake. You might want to have Mage Prayer on again here, because sometimes these double warp skeletons can really hurt. And then you just want to Surge Bladed Dive down towards the gate for Ambassador, and just group up these enemies again. Assault Bleed one of the skeletons, and then Slaughter Dismember the other. Unfortunately, one of the mini bosses was here aggroing on me, so I couldn't really heal up that much, so I had to use some food. But just eat up a little bit for the start of the Ambassador fight. If you want to tally out, you can. If you want to just bank at the chest, you can do that. What you do want to do is activate Disruption Shield for the start of the Ambassador fight, so that you can tank the mage hit. If you want to use Devotion instead, you can do that as well. But just start off with a Zerk, Barge, Adrenaline Potion, place a Von Bomb, and then Cleave, Sever, and place an Assault Bleed with your Terrasol Maul. If you want to flank, you can do that as well. Once you place your Assault Bleed, just go into a Destroy, and then a Decimate and a Flurry. Once he gives you the smoke, the next attack is going to be melee, so melee pray for that. Once Zerk is over, you're going to want to use a Tendrils, step back and stall your Dismember, waiting for the smoke to drop, and then once it drops, go back in with a Dismember and then a Decimate, and then step to the side and ZGS spec. At this point you want to build for a Destroy, and then once the black hole is a little bit below half, you want to activate your Vitality Pot to tank that nice and easy. And just build for an Assault as well with your Terrasol Maul. Once you hit 50%, whether or not you're in ZGS spec, just drop a Claw spec. And then when you're about to drop the smoke, stand back and res the mage hit that's coming, and then phase the boss. If you phase it before that, just you can drop the smoke at the back of the arena, because you don't have to step back for that res or anything like that. Head over to the spinners, barge the first one and place a Flurry Bleed +2 basics, then Slaughter the second spinner, and Dismember as well, adding a couple extra basics. Here you want to Dragon Battle Axe spec, and just remember to call your familiar, as sometimes he's not sticking with you, and you just want him to help out on the spinners. And just continue using basics and building with your DBA. Once you get to 100%, you want to get to the second to last spinner, and then Natural Instinct. And then you're going to build to full. As you can see, I left one of the spinners alive back there, so I'm just going to Bladed Dive back through the fire and just finish that off. So you should be at 100% because of Natural Instinct now. You then want to Zerk as the spinner goes into Ambassador. The reason you have Natural Instinct here is so that your first few basics here give you extra adrenaline, so that you can get a full Zerk rotation off without having to use Limitless, and then you can get a full Assault Bleed into a Destroy, into a Flurry. Remember to be using your Spiritual Prayers to get your Ripper Demon specs off. Once Zerk is over, just drop a Dismember Bleed and then Bladed Dive out for the smoke. Head back in with some basics and then get a ZGS spec off. Inside your ZGS you just want to get a Destroy, and depending on what his HP is at, if you get another black hole, just make sure you have enough HP to tank it. Sometimes your Vitality Pot might not be off cooldown, so just remember to make sure that it is, and if it's not, to just eat up. Once ZGS is over, drop a Dismember and a Tendrils, Anticipate and Zerk, so that your barge is ready. And when he phases, you want to be Zerking and then barging in with a Flank, Cleave, and then a Assault Bleed with your Terrasol Maul. then you want to destroy and flurry. If you want to walk under him like this, that's up to you. It just makes it easier to block off the smoke. Do a 3-hit flurry, and then when you're at 50% adrenaline, you should be able to get a Zerk inside your claw spec. Sorry, a claw spec inside your Zerk. You then want to be building for 50% here, and getting ready for his first Mage Onslaught. There's the Mage Onslaught, so what you want to do now is just put Mage Prey on and activate Devotion, and then get a ZGS spec off. And here you can use your Limitless to just get some thresholds off earlier. I got a Relentless on my ZGS, so I didn't have to activate Limitless there. And that will be the end of the boss fight. If you happen to get up to a second Mage Onslaught, just Debilitate Reflect and put Mage Prayer on, and you'll be fine to just tank that. As you can see, I didn't really use much food, so if you follow this guide, you should have a pretty breezy time. And that was also using Grimoire. If you want to use a Vamp Scrim, your kill will be a little bit slower, but definitely a whole lot easier. So that is completely up to you. And if you have any questions about this boss fight, just put a comment down in the comment section and I'll get back to you on that. That is going to be the end of my full advanced melee guide to Elite Dungeons 3. Hopefully this video was able to help you guys out, and if you have any feedback or any questions, just leave it down in the comment section below or hit me up on Discord or in my stream, all of which will be linked down in the description. And yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video and have a great day.